All right, get ready, because today we're going deep, really deep into something, well, something we all experience but don't always think about too much.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Pain.
Pain, exactly.
Specifically, how ideas about it have changed over time.
Especially fascinating, I think, is looking at how Turkish medicine has contributed to all that.
For sure. And we've got a ton of great material to dig into, right? Historical texts,
Yeah.
medical treatises, even some archaeology.
That's right.
So what's the big goal here for our deep dive?
Well, I think for me, it's about, tracing how those early physicians, especially in the Turkish tradition, how they tackled those big questions about pain. What did they think caused it?
Right.
How did they try to treat it?
And how'd that lead to what we know now?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go way back, right, to the very beginning. What were some of those really early beliefs about pain?
Okay, so picture this. A world where if you got sick or were in pain, it was like a punishment from the gods or maybe some evil spirit messing with you.
That was like a really common belief in tons of ancient cultures, and it really shaped how people tried to find relief.
Yeah, I guess if you think, like, a headache is from an angry spirit, you're probably not running for the medicine cabinet, are you?
Definitely not. You'd probably be turning to rituals and amulets or even, things like trepanation.
Wait, trepanation?
Yeah.
Remind me what that is.
Like drilling holes in the skull.
Oh, to release those spirits?
To let out those evil spirits, yeah.
I mean, that sounds kind of painful in addition to whatever they were already dealing with, doesn't it?
Right. But it shows just how much people wanted relief and how much their beliefs really drove their approaches to healing.
So when do we start to shift away from the supernatural stuff and move towards a more, rational idea of pain?
Well, somewhere around 500 BC, there's this Greek physician, Alcmaeon. He starts to move away from all that mystical stuff and towards a more physical explanation.
He suggested that it was the brain, not the gods, that was really at the center of how we experience pain.
So instead of, blaming the heavens for your pain, he's pointing to this thing inside our heads.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big shift, I'd say.
Yeah, and although it seems basic now, back then it was a huge deal. It was like the seed for what became the humoral theory, which was super important in Western medicine for a long, long time.
Oh, right. Okay, the humoral theory. Can you give me a quick refresher on that? It's been a little while.
So the humoral theory, basically it said that our health, all of it, depended on these 4 fluids or humors in the body. Blood, phlegm,
right,
yellow bile, and black bile.
So if these were out of balance, that caused problems?
Exactly. They thought any imbalance would cause disease, and that included pain.
So like if you had a fever, they might say you've got too much blood and try to, drain some of it out.
Exactly. Bloodletting.
Oh, yeah.
It was all based on the humoral theory. And while we might think it's extreme now, it was totally mainstream treatment for centuries.
Wow. Okay, so we've gone from blaming the gods to our bodily fluids being out of whack.
Yeah.
What's the next big step forward?
Well, here comes this prominent guy, the Roman physician Galen.
Galen.
Yeah, he was all about anatomy, and he really advanced our understanding of the nervous system, especially the role of nerves when we feel sensations.
Okay, so now he's starting to connect the physical stuff in our bodies to how we experience pain, right?
Totally. Galen said that pain was basically the result of the movement of something he called animal spirits. They were flowing through the nerves.
Animal spirits, huh?
Yeah. Sounds a bit strange now.
It does, a little bit.
But it was actually huge. It was a big step towards seeing pain in a more mechanistic way.
Right, okay. So we're starting to get closer to a real scientific understanding, but still some interesting ideas floating around.
For sure. And you got to remember, these early guys, they didn't have all the tools and knowledge we have now.
Oh, right.
They were real pioneers.
Yeah.
Setting the stage for all the discoveries that came later.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about some of the big names in the West, like Alcmaeon, Hippocrates, Galen. But what about Turkish medicine? Where do they fit into this whole story?
Well, this is where things get even more fascinating. So while all these Western ideas were developing, there was this whole vibrant medical tradition happening in the East.
Okay.
Turkish physicians, they were drawing from all these influences, Greek, Roman, Persian, even Indian medicine.
Wow.
And they were coming up with their own unique ways of understanding and treating pain.
So it wasn't just a one-way street, like knowledge just flowing from west to east.
Not at all. It was more like this crossroads of ideas. And right in the middle of it all, you have these Turkish physicians like Ibni Sina, you might know him as Avicenna,
Oh, yeah?
and he made some groundbreaking contributions that influenced medicine for centuries.
Ibni Sina, that name is coming up. Sounds like he's pretty important in all this.
Oh, he's super important. His book, The Canon of Medicine, it was like the go-to medical textbook in both the East and West.
Really?
Yeah. And in it, he really dives deep into pain, gives these detailed descriptions, classifications, stuff that was way ahead of its time.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a real visionary.
Okay, before we get too deep into Ibn Sina, I'm curious about the very early Turkish doctors. Like, how did they even first appear on the scene?
Great question. So to understand that, we need to rewind even further and look at the pre-Islamic Turkic communities. These nomadic people, they had this deep connection to nature and developed this really sophisticated knowledge of plants and their medicinal properties.
So they were already experts in herbal medicine.
Exactly. And then as they started interacting with other cultures, like the Persians and Sogdians, they picked up even more medical knowledge.
Oh, interesting. So they were kind of blending their own knowledge with these new ideas from their neighbors.
Precisely. And that's how those first Turkish doctors, the Otaka or Hekim, really emerged.
Otak and Hakim.
Yeah. They were super important in their communities.
Sounds like it.
Not just as healers, but also as these wise figures passing down their knowledge through the generations.
They must have been really respected. So was it all just herbal medicine, or did they have other ways of treating pain?
Well, herbal remedies were a big part of it.
Right.
But they were also good at things like setting bones, taking care of wounds, which was, essential for managing pain from injuries. And then they also used things like massage and cupping therapy.
They sound like very hands-on healers.
Very much so. And they believed those techniques could, promote healing and relieve pain by, influencing the flow of energy in the body.
So it seems like they had a pretty holistic approach, not just focusing on the physical symptoms.
Absolutely. And that focus on the whole person, it really stayed a key part of Turkish medicine throughout its history.
Okay, so we've set the stage for those early Turkish doctors, talked about their herbal medicine roots, how they learned from their neighbors and all their different tools for dealing with pain. But what happened next? How did Turkish medicine evolve, and what were some of the big moments in their understanding of pain?
Well, that's when things really get interesting. The arrival of Islam in the 7th century, it completely transformed Turkish culture, including medicine.
Okay.
It brought in all these Islamic medical traditions, saw the rise of hospitals, and led to some incredible physicians who really pushed the boundaries of medical knowledge.
Okay, this is getting good. Definitely need to pick this up in part 2. Can't wait to learn more about how Turkish medicine evolved and, of course, dive into the work of Ibn Sina. For everyone listening, stay tuned. We're just getting started.
Okay.
So we're back. And last time we talked about the roots of Turkish medicine, those early healers, how they kind of combined their own knowledge with what they were learning from the cultures around them. And then we ended on this cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger.
About Islam coming to the region and the changes it brought to medicine.
That's right. Big changes.
So let's pick up right there. What were some of the biggest shifts that happened during that time?
Well, when Islam spread, it just brought this huge wave of intellectual and cultural change. Everything was transforming, and medicine wasn't immune to all that.
Makes sense.
One big development was that ancient Greek and Roman medical texts, they started getting translated into Arabic.
Oh, interesting.
Which meant all that knowledge, it became accessible to a much wider audience.
So those classical ideas that had been circulating in the West, now Turkish physicians could get their hands on them.
Exactly. And that just ignited this incredible burst of intellectual activity. Turkish scholars, they weren't just absorbing it all. They were really thinking critically about those ideas, adding their own observations, developing their own theories and treatments.
So it was like a period of synthesis and innovation, not just blindly accepting what they were reading.
Exactly. And during this super exciting time, the idea of hospitals by Maristanes, they really took hold and flourished.
By Maristanes. Okay.
Yeah. And these places, they weren't just for treating the sick, they were centers of learning, research, even medical education.
Oh, so I'm picturing like a medieval university, but for medicine. Were these hospitals just for Turkish physicians, or were there scholars from other places too?
Oh, they were really cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Scholars from all over the Islamic world, no matter their ethnicity or religion, they would travel to these centers to study, share ideas, collaborate on research.
Wow, so truly international community. That's amazing.
It really was.
So these hospitals, they played a huge role in spreading knowledge and fueling innovation in Turkish medicine. But I'm still thinking about pain.
Yeah.
How did their understanding of pain specifically evolve during this time?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And to really dig into that, we have to talk about, the big guy, Ibni Sina.
Ibni Sina. There he is again. Clearly a major figure in all of this. So tell us why he's so important, especially when it comes to understanding pain.
Well, Ibni Sina, or Avicenna as he's known in the West, he was just this brilliant polymath. He was a physician, philosopher, astronomer, poet.
Wow, a true Renaissance man.
And his impact on medicine, it was huge, truly revolutionary. His book, The Canon of Medicine, it was like this encyclopedia of medical knowledge. He brought together wisdom from the Greek, Roman, Persian, Indian traditions, and then added his own careful observations and insights from his own practice.
Like a medical Bible.
Exactly.
So what did he say about pain? Did he just repeat the old theories, or did he actually have some new ideas?
Oh, he went way beyond just repeating. Ibn Sina, he really got the complexity of pain. He understood that it wasn't just one thing, but this multifaceted phenomenon with all these different causes and ways it could show up.
Yep.
He dug into the anatomy and physiology of pain, explored how nerves transmit pain signals up to the brain.
So he was building on the work of earlier physicians like Galen, but taking it further.
Exactly. He went beyond Galen's idea of animal spirits and gave us a more sophisticated understanding of how nerves actually work.
Okay.
He also really emphasized the importance of telling different types of pain apart. He realized that pain from a burn, for example, had a totally different mechanism than pain from inflammation or pressure.
So he was basically creating this system for classifying pain, realizing that one treatment wasn't going to work for every kind of pain.
Exactly. And that nuanced understanding, it was crucial for figuring out better pain management strategies. And get this, his insights into the psychological and emotional aspects of pain, they were really remarkable too. He recognized that fear, anxiety, even cultural beliefs, all that could impact how someone experiences pain.
So he was like centuries ahead of his time.
He really was.
He understood that the mind and body are connected when it comes to pain, something we're only, really starting to fully grasp in modern medicine.
That's right. His holistic approach, taking into account not just the physical symptoms, but the patient's mental and emotional state as well, it's really quite similar to what we're seeing in modern pain management.
It's amazing how these ideas from so long ago are still relevant today. But let's not forget we're talking about Turkish medicine specifically. So how did Ibn Sina''s work shape how they thought about and treated pain?
Well, his influence was huge. It really lasted. The canon of medicine, it became like the standard textbook in medical schools and hospitals all across the Seljuk and Ottoman empires. Turkish physicians, they embraced his holistic approach, his focus on observation and clinical reasoning, and all those detailed pain classifications he came up with.
So he was like laying the groundwork, providing the foundation for Turkish physicians who came after him.
Exactly. And that leads us to another exciting chapter, the development of specialized hospitals and the rise of these master surgeons who would really refine the art and science of pain management.
Okay, this is getting good. Tell me more about these master surgeons. What kind of stuff were they doing to treat pain? Were they still mostly using herbal remedies, or were there new innovations coming along?
Turkish physicians, they definitely still valued the power of plants. They had this incredible wealth of plants in Anatolia.
Right.
And they kept refining their knowledge of herbal medicine over centuries. But they were also adopting new techniques and technologies. Surgical instruments, for example, they allowed them to perform more complicated procedures.
Oh, wow.
And they made big advancements in wound care and pain management after surgery.
I can just picture these skilled surgeons, working in these busy hospitals, surrounded by students, learning everything they could. What were some of the specific ways they treated pain?
They had all sorts of tools in their arsenal. Opium, for example, they knew it was a strong painkiller.
Right.
So they often used it to relieve severe pain. They also developed these sophisticated techniques for anesthesia.
Anesthesia.
Yeah. Using herbal mixtures and things like nerve compression to numb the area.
It's fascinating how they were experimenting with all these different approaches, trying to find what worked best to ease suffering. But it also makes me wonder about the ethics of it all. Was there this sense of compassion, like a real desire to minimize pain? Or was it just seen as, just an inevitable part of the healing process?
That's a really important question. And it's hard to say for sure what their exact ethical frameworks were. But we can get some clues from their medical texts and from historical accounts. And one key principle that pops up over and over again is this concept of Rahmet. It's this idea that encompasses compassion, mercy, and a deep concern for the well-being of others.
So this Ramit, it suggests there was this moral obligation to try to alleviate suffering whenever they could.
Exactly. Physicians weren't just seen as technicians fixing a problem, you know. They were expected to treat their patients with empathy, recognizing that pain wasn't just physical, it was this deeply human experience that needed care and compassion.
That's a really beautiful idea. It really speaks to a kind of humanistic approach to medicine that's, well, it's timeless.
It is. And this emphasis on compassion, it wasn't just limited to physicians either. Rulers and wealthy philanthropists, they were really important in setting up and supporting hospitals. They wanted to make sure that everyone, even the poorest people in society, could get quality medical care.
So this was a pretty remarkable system, combining scientific advancement with a sense of social responsibility.
I think so.
But I do have to wonder, did their understanding of how pain actually worked, the biology of it all, did that line up with what we know today?
That's where things get really interesting. Their knowledge of anatomy and physiology, it was impressive for the time. But of course, they were limited by what tools and technology they had available.
They didn't have like MRIs and things like that.
Right, no fancy imaging. And they didn't understand neurochemistry the way we do now.
So even though they were amazing at observing symptoms and coming up with effective treatments, they didn't have the same insight into the really intricate workings of the nervous system.
That's right. But that doesn't make their achievements any less impressive. Their observations, their careful classifications of pain, their holistic approach, it all laid the groundwork for what we know today. They were pushing the boundaries of knowledge, working within the limits of their time.
Their legacy is pretty amazing. We've covered so much already in this deep dive, from those early healers, the rise of hospitals, to the groundbreaking work of Ibni Sina.
It's been quite a journey.
But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I'm curious about. The spiritual side of Turkish medicine and the role of those traditional healing practices.
Yes. That's a fascinating part of the story, and it often gets overlooked. You see, while they were really embracing scientific progress and rational thought, they also acknowledged the power of spirituality. They understood that the mind, body, and spirit are all connected.
Ooh, that sounds like a perfect topic for part 3 of our deep dive.
It does, doesn't it?
We'll explore that spiritual side of Turkish medicine and see how those traditional healing practices played into their understanding and treatment of pain. Don't go anywhere. We've got more to discover. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into pain throughout history. We've been through those early ideas, the rise of Turkish medicine, that amazing Ibni Sina and those skilled surgeons.
Yeah.
Pushing the boundaries of pain management. But before the break, you mentioned something really interesting, the spiritual side of Turkish medicine. So let's explore that. What was the role of spirituality, in their understanding of pain and how they treated it?
Right. Well, you have to remember that for a long time, medicine and spirituality, they weren't seen as separate things at all.
Mm-hmm.
They were all connected, part of this worldview where, humans were part of this bigger cosmic order.
So it wasn't just about the physical body.
Not at all.
They were thinking about the whole person.
Right. Mind, body, spirit. Turkish physicians, they were totally on board with scientific knowledge and rational thinking.
Right.
But they also recognized how powerful spiritual practices and beliefs could be in healing.
So they saw pain maybe not just as a physical thing, but also as a sign that something was off spiritually.
Exactly. So alongside all those herbal remedies and surgical techniques, they were also using spiritual elements in their treatments.
Oh, wow. So what did that look like, practically speaking?
It could take a lot of different forms. Prayer, for instance, was often a big part of the healing process. Physicians would pray for their patients' well-being, asking for divine guidance, and blessings for a quick recovery.
Makes sense. Turning to something bigger than yourself for comfort and support when you're suffering.
Right, it's a very human thing to do.
Yeah. So were there other spiritual practices they used too?
Absolutely. They might recite verses from the Quran or invoke the names of prophets and saints who were believed to have healing powers.
Oh, interesting.
These practices, it was all about connecting with the divine and tapping into that spiritual energy for healing.
So they were kind of creating this sacred space around healing, acknowledging that spiritual side of pain and suffering.
Were all these practices just based on Islamic beliefs, or did they draw from other traditions as well?
Well, Turkish medicine, with its history of blending different cultures, they also brought in elements from those pre-Islamic Turkic traditions and Sufi practices.
Right.
For example, they might use talismans or amulets with verses or symbols on them that were thought to have protective or healing qualities.
So it was really this integrated approach, combining Islamic beliefs with these elements from other spiritual traditions. Did they see these spiritual practices as a replacement for, like those conventional medical treatments, or were they used together?
They usually use them together.
Okay.
They complemented each other. It was all part of that holistic approach,
Mm.
addressing both the physical and spiritual sides of healing.
They really seem to get that mind, body, and spirit are all connected, huh? So did that perspective influence how they approach managing pain in any specific ways? Oh, yeah, absolutely. One important idea that comes up a lot is the concept of sabur. It's about patience, endurance, and acceptance in the face of hardship. It was seen as a real virtue, a way to develop inner strength and resilience while going through those tough times with pain and illness.
So it wasn't just about getting rid of pain no matter what. It was also about, learning to deal with it, finding a sense of peace, even when you're suffering.
Exactly. They understood that pain is often just a part of life, and that cultivating acceptance and resilience could help people face those challenges with more strength and dignity.
That's a powerful message, and one that's really relevant today, especially when it comes to chronic pain, where, completely getting rid of the pain isn't always possible.
That's right.
We've talked so much about the Turkish physicians and their practices, but what about the patients? How did they view pain and suffering? Did they think it was a punishment or some kind of test of their faith or something else entirely?
That's a fascinating question. And honestly, it's tough to give a definite answer. Everyone's beliefs and experiences would have been different. But we can look at the literature, poetry, folklore from that time, which often reflects the cultural
Yeah,
attitudes.
sure. So what do those sources tell us about how people thought about pain back then?
Well, one thing that comes up a lot is the idea of pain as like a crucible,
Yeah.
a transformative experience that could lead to spiritual growth and a deeper understanding of yourself and the world.
Okay.
It wasn't always seen as something bad, something to avoid,
Right.
but as a possible opportunity for self-discovery and strengthening your faith.
It's pretty different from how we often think about pain today, huh?
It is.
Where it's, often seen as this purely negative thing that we just want to get rid of as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Their worldview allowed them to see pain in a more nuanced way, recognizing that it could bring both suffering and growth. It was just part of being human, something to approach with courage and acceptance.
And that's a valuable lesson for us today as we continue to, try to understand and manage pain. So as we wrap up this deep dive, are there any key takeaways you'd like listeners to, remember?
I hope they've come away with a better understanding of the long and complex history of pain management, especially those incredible contributions from Turkish medicine. From those early healers who were so connected to nature, to the development of hospitals, and Ibni Sina's groundbreaking work. They showed a dedication to scientific advancement, but also that holistic approach to healing, treating the whole person.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about those spiritual practices and that focus on building inner resilience. All of that is so relevant to how we think about managing pain today. So to everyone listening, as you go about your day, remember that our understanding of pain, how we treat it, how we cope with it, it's all the result of this long and fascinating journey, shaped by countless people and cultures who came before us.
That's right.
Their wisdom and insights, they're still guiding us today as we, deal with the complexities of pain and try to alleviate suffering in our own time. Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive.